Hi, I'm Tyler, and I love worship music.
And I'm Kyle, and I hate it.
And these are Worship Music Reviews. For Worship Music Reviews, we listen to a popular worship song and give our perspectives from both an optimistic
and pessimistic
perspective.
The Berean task was created by Vince Wright to measure theological depth and clarity of worship songs. Songs are identified as milk or meat, simple or complex, and quality is listed on a scale of 1 to 10, as well as whether you should use it in a worship service or not. Today on Worship Music Reviews, we're listening to Majesty in Misery by Wolves at the Gate, as we judge it on the categories of musicality, lyricality, and theologicality. Let's play the song.
In high school, I listened to a lot of anime music videos on YouTube, and they usually were heavy metal. And so I just got flashbacks to some of these AMVs. Like it pierced right through my optimistic personality.
Your optimistic personality?
Yeah, take that optimism.
Is that like a nickname for you? We can call you Optimistic Prime.
Oh, that's good, Kyle. Good job. Okay, I get why people listen to heavy metal when they work out now, because it's getting my blood pumping.
It gets your blood pumping, yeah. 100%. I do listen to a lot of heavy metal when I work out.
Who needs pre-workout when you've got heavy metal? I see the appeal.
Yeah, okay. So let's go off the cuff. What are your reactions to this song?
Okay, big first reaction is like, I feel like this band and this genre does a way better time of demonstrating and emoting the grief and pain of the cross,
right.
Which is something that's so central to a lot of Christian music and Christian worship music. Like I feel it more as they perform it in this style.
Right. So one of the things that I think about when it comes to metal music and heavy metal is like, why are we screaming? And a lot of questions are, especially from like your mom or the equivalent, like, why are they screaming or why are they so angry? Right. I think it's like in a Christian context, especially, I think it makes a lot of sense. Dude, like this is a really rough thing. They, like from the lyricality and theologicality perspective, it goes through a lot, right? Of who Jesus is, what he did, why it matters, and what does it mean for your life. So it's actually really robust. It says like, hey, cast down by wicked plans, tortured by our own hands. We were the reason that he is tortured, but he died for us anyway, right? Like it's a very angry, scream-worthy moment, like this great amount of grief that you're talking about.
Totally. But I think that's also where it loses me, because at the end it's like, oh God, I truly give my beating heart and living breath. And I feel like that is something that's extremely like tender and warm and not angry.
Sure.
And when they scream it, it's like, oh, that kind of pulls me out of it.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I think it depends on your context of where you're writing it from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for a lot of people, their following of God and their conversion moment or like what their faith looks like is something that doesn't necessarily cause a lot of grief, anguish, pain, and anger.
Gotcha.
But I do think there are moments where we see it in the Bible too, where it's like, I do not want to follow you in this way, God, but I'm going to.
Okay.
In the first place, right? Like, do I want to die to myself and grow in the context of my marriage? Sometimes no, because like I'd rather just stay myself. But there's that emotion of anger plus drive and passion that are there. It's like I love my partner, I love my wife so much, but all of this stuff is like, why do I have to change to love her better? Could we not just love each other well in the state that I am in? And that demands that I actually go forth anyway. And so, like, if that's your context for you, that moment of like, I'm giving my life to God, it's a very positive, happy, tender thing. Like, that's great. I do think for me in my context of my own life, I don't think this is very much the case. This is a painful, gritty experience, but it's worth it. But it's painful and it's gritty and it cost me a lot.
Yeah,
so I'm
counting the cost is picking up your cross and dying.
Right.
And so there's deep emotion, and it's not always a positive emotion in that.
Yeah, and quote unquote positive, right? Because anger and emotions are just kind of indicative of what's going on in your soul, and whatever's going on in your heart and soul, that's a little different. It's neither positive or negative. Like, we got to have full disclosure that I have listened to Wolves at the Gate for a while. And that I went to their concert when I was like 15 years old. So like a long time ago. And actually we were just at Reach Conference in Orlando, Florida, and they were performing there as well. So we got to see them live and they were pretty great still. So it was pretty fun to hang out with them and like to like mosh pit around and like headbang to their music. For me as a 15-year-old like teenager, finding Christian metal music was something that really meant a lot to me, but also from a musicality perspective, right? I remember at that concert, right, like people were going nuts for bands that were not Christian and bands that were Christian because the music was good. They just wanted an excellent guitar and a great double bass on their drums. And that breakdown where you're like headbanging like this, like that's what they wanted. And Christian bands were able to bring that to the table. I would not share most Christian music, worship music with my friends, but I was glad to suggest Christian metal because of the high quality nature of it.
Yeah, that's coming through. I hear that quite a bit. Theologicality, very sound. And it covers so much. A lot of it can be like pulled straight out of Isaiah 52 and 53, particularly 53 about the God's suffering servant who is Jesus Christ. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, the suffering servant, that's like a perfect image for something like this, for a song like this. It really, really plays to that imagery. And if you think about like the story of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8, he is distressed almost at the suffering servant passage that he had just read, and it is up to Philip to walk him through. And that makes me feel like if that passage were to be a song, it should be a metal song.
Maybe. I think a lot of Isaiah has a lot of like hip hop vibes too, because it's very lyrical. If we were to do this for a culture test, right? If we're gonna put this unironically in a movie soundtrack, I think if the director didn't listen to the words 100%, because the music itself is pretty quality, because they're relatively high quality metal, and some of them are very fun, right? Like I've listened to like Demon Hunter and them, and like Under Oath, though they're a little bit more, they're like light metal, but like there's some metal there. Like those, they have some just
they're like aluminum.
Yeah, they just have some great songs. So like there doesn't have to be a divide between culturally relevant and acceptable and high quality and deep theological work and accurate to what we're talking about. I think those two things often feel like they're separate. And I don't think we have to have that reality be in case, which, of course, in the context of worship music is something that makes me very sad because I feel like we choose one over the other, right? Like, let's just jump right there. Do I want this in my church? Yeah, I would love for this to be in my church, but what would everybody say if we brought them in? Some churches, I'm sure, are down, but a lot of them are not. And why? Because if we really read through the lyrics, this is like a sermon about what Jesus is really like and what his suffering is and what it means for your life. And it's like a 3-point sermon, right? But in the
you're saying the Baptists would love it?
Yeah, in theory, but they're screaming. Do Baptists scream?
Do they?
I don't know. But like, would this be acceptable in a church context? And I think kind of the answer is no for most churches. And that's sad because for somebody like me who really found a lot of impact on my life through in my own faith, it kind of says, hey, I'm not welcome. And that's not what any church in theory wants for me.
I think culture test, because it's less on the nose, because people rarely listen to the full lyrics of songs like this, it could be used more in culture. I think that's totally accurate. I would probably agree. I think this would make a great AMV soundtrack. Like this is a great music video for some shonen protagonist doing some crazy stuff.
Okay, that's really true. Yeah, you're totally right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Would you want this in your church? Okay, so as much as I appreciate your opinion, Kyle, and as much as I want you welcome in my church, I'm thinking about, do we sing this together? And I cannot imagine the 70-year-old men and women in my church going in on the screaming. Right. I feel like we would need a lesson in how to do that type of vocalization.
Yep.
I think it's a genre that's just not super accessible to a lot of people, as much as I think it's a valuable contribution to music. I think I would want it in my church, but I would want it in a place that actually could fit well. But I also think that because of the style and because of the genre, it needs to find a specific place.
We do some really niche stuff in church, right? Like I remember going to a church in Virginia, and they would have someone play a classical piano piece in like 1600s, 1700s, back when those songs were written. Some of them were actually extremely radical because they weren't directly talking about God. So people got in trouble for writing secular music because it was associated with stuff like bar drinking and stuff, right? So like, why were you bringing the bar into church? Now it's acceptable, right? This classical music. So like, why do we have the classical music piece is acceptable and the metal music is not? And I wonder why. It's awesome to see them use their talents and skills for Christ. Like, awesome. What about my skills? What about wolves at the gate skills? What about
my kazoo skill?
what about your kazoo skills? Like, yeah, like what if you were really passionate about that? Like, you should, right?
Not to toot my own horn.
Yeah, no, literally not, because kazoo is not a horn. But like why is that so niche? Like,
I don't know, man. I don't get paid the big bucks to answer those questions.
right? So I want to think about that too. Anyway, do we think this song is milk or meat?
Oh, it's meaty meat.
Yeah, I do think this is meat.
This is creatine injected steak.
Yeah, metal, bro. It's raw. It's raw.
With a rusty syringe.
Okay, no, because we want to be sanitary. But metal beyond reproach, bro. For the Berean rating, what would you give this?
My personal rating, because it's not necessarily in my genre of choice, and because it is like still something I liked, I would probably give it like an 8. like
I'm at like an 8.5, because I also think Wolves at the Gate has more music that I like more, and it's also more subtle and has stronger lyricism than this. But this is a very solid sampling of what their music is like, for sure. But let's see what the Berean test says.
Wolves at the Gates, Majesty and Misery is another tearjerker.
Tearjerker?
Oh, not the word I would have used, but I am interested. It reminds us of the horrible pain and suffering that the perfect, loving Jesus endured for our redemption. He is also our Savior and King, to whom we pledge our life. These points bring him glory. It is also easily understood by those who don't yet believe. This song is not suitable for corporate worship for obvious reasons. Interesting. But the final score is a 10 out of 10. Okay,
so I'm upset because 10 out of 10, right? Like, are we really comparing like the full-bodied take on Christ's death here to like We Believe for It, or or Firm Foundation, or what we just listened to? What was that Hope Darth song or whatever? Like, is that the same? Like, are they both 10? Like, one of these walks through like his whole life and death and what it means for your life, and talks about what his death represents, and the other one is like, we're gonna build our house upon the rock but we never use all this Christianese and we have no idea what it means. What the heck?
He's very liberal with the 10s.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I might want to call him a little more conservative than liberal, but yeah, sure. But
It's not that kind of podcast.
It's not that kind of podcast. Okay. But like, for obvious reasons. What are the obvious reasons, bro? I don't know. You could sing thousands of worship songs and never truly worship God, because your heart and your posture could be in the wrong place, right?
Well, I mean, anyone can have a bad heart posture or a good heart posture.
Yeah. So why can't we have it? Anyway.
I'm with you, Kyle, and I appreciate your taste in music.
Thanks. Even if it's not your taste in music.
Yeah. But maybe we should ask our audience the question.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, I can do it?
Yeah, you can do it.
That's very kind of you.
I'll let you do it. Go ahead.
Well, do you want this music in your church?
Follow us for more content like this.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. If you're interested in more content like this, subscribe and follow to this podcast, and follow us on Instagram at IndigitousUS. And send us a DM if you like the pod, have a song suggestion, or give us a like. We'll see you next time.